Hi, and welcome to show number 8 of the elcafecitotraveltalks, a podcast where people share travel stories and adventures. My name is Tony Lloyd, and I'm going to be your host. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people who have subscribed so far and the people who have been listening in and sending in their comments. Please, for the ones who have not done so yet, we'd like to encourage you to subscribe. Also, leave us a review and your feedbacks. And any comments that you have, you can send me an email at elcafecitotraveltalks@gmail.com. For today's show, I'm actually doing something for the first time. I'm recording remotely. I'm here in Cuenca, Ecuador, where I'm in an empty hostel at the moment because of the coronavirus. However, my guest is in the southern part of England. He's a blind solo traveler who's been traveling now for almost 20 years, and his goal is to go to all the countries of the world, of which at this moment he's done over 125 countries. So please get yourself a cup of tea or a coffee and enjoy today's show.
My name's Tony Giles, Giles. I'm from England. I live in the far southwest of England, so I'm about 4 hours from London by train. I live in a small beach town at the moment. I'm totally blind. I was born with a rare eye condition, and I went partially deaf when I was 4 or 5 years old. Apparently a genetic condition. I'm the only person in my entire family with it. I basically spent the first 3 years of my life in the dark, couldn't open my eyes, extremely sensitive to light. And then once I was given dark glasses, I was about 3 years old. I was allowed to play in the street, run around with my friends and stuff. Because my eyes are so sensitive to light, I could actually sense the difference between black and white objects and black and white shapes. So I was able to sense the difference between big black letters on white paper. So I learned to read and write from about the age of 5, 6 onwards. I went to a school 30 kilometers from my home every day. When I was about the age of 10, my sensitivity to light had almost stopped working. So even though my eye condition never changed, my sensitivity to light changed. But then I was sent to a boarding school over 400 kilometers away from my home. And that was where I learned Braille, which is what science. I also learned mobility training. That's how to use a long white cane to find objects on the ground so I wouldn't trip up with my feet, and basically had to learn to get about, first around the school campus and then eventually out onto the street and by using my hearing and other senses, and eventually by the age of 13, 14, 15, catching buses and trains and eventually going home.
So, been blind your entire life. When did the curiosity of travel come about?
So I think it was sort of kind of just a natural thing for me. It was a combination of the sort of going to school from the age of 5. That was a sort of first sort of notion of traveling, and then boarding school. And when I was at boarding school, I was 10, 11. My first desire was to get home as much as possible to see my parents. I was very close to my mum and my dad. So that was the initial. And also about that age, my dad was telling me his stories. He was in the Merchant Navy before I was born, so he told me about traveling across Australia by train. It took him 8 days in the 1950s, and sailing up the St. Lawrence River into Canada with icebergs, sort of sailing down a ship's side and stuff like this. And
wow.
When I was 16, I got the opportunity to go to Boston in the States with my school.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real eye-opener. Everything was different. People spoke in funny voices, funny accents. Everything was so much bigger. I mean, I've been to London, half a dozen times, but in the States, the pavements, the sidewalks were so much bigger, so much wider. Everything was bigger. The food's bigger, and traffic goes a different direction to what we're used to in the UK. But I think one of the biggest things I noticed was that people came up to me and just ask me questions, just talk straight away. There was no shyness or reluctance, which is what people are kind of used to in the UK. People are a bit more worried about saying something wrong or saying, but in the States, it's just, are you blind? Or it's directness. So that was very refreshing.
Okay. What do your friends and family say about you traveling by yourself? I actually have met once before another gentleman who's blind that's traveling, but he always has someone who accompanies him. And from what I understand, you do it completely solo.
I think it's because I sort of started traveling when I was so young, and got that independence that my mum wanted me to have at such a young age. I think I was concerned about it, but not completely freaked out about it. And because I sort of did it sort of naturally, I went to the States with the school, and then I went back with a friend, and then eventually did it by myself. I went over and studied there. And then, so I didn't just sort of take off one day at 18, didn't come home for 6 months. So I think it was It is a bit more gradual, maybe. But I think I'm not really sure how much my brothers and sisters understand it. They say, "Oh, Tony's Tony." I don't think they really understand how I do it, why I do it. My mum does to some extent, and she just knows it makes me happy. And she said she never tried to stop me because I do it anyway. You know,
Okay.
obviously at the beginning, yeah, we're quite. Since I keep coming back, they got less worried.
Okay, I like
one
that.
or two incidents. Yeah, there'd been one or two times. I was stuck in Africa for a while. There was a lockdown. I was in Mali, and that was a bit of a worry. But apart from that,
you keep making it home, so they're happy about that. Let's talk a little bit about how you travel. How do you find the places that you're going to stay? How do you get yourself from home to the different locations? And then when you're in the locations, let's talk a little bit about that.
Now I've developed I've been traveling for like 22 years. So over the last sort of that period, I developed strategies, different ways of coping, different ways of researching, different ways of planning. When I first started traveling, when I was abroad, 19, 20, 21, I didn't really plan much. I started by going to the States and then Australia and New Zealand. So there were countries I was comfortable with. I've been learning about them at school. I've been reading about them through Braille or listening to audiobooks or listening to the radio. So, and from listening to sport, like cricket, I knew where the main cities in Australia and New Zealand were. So that was quite easy. And I didn't have much access to the internet back then. We're sort of talking 2000, 2001. It was a case of getting my first accommodation, and I've been using hostels for about 6 or 7 years by then. So I'm kind of used to going into a room and meeting strangers and talking to people. So yeah, it's just a case of finding out information by word of mouth. And then as traveling got more complicated and I started going to countries that didn't speak English as a first language and there was less infrastructure like Vietnam and Thailand, I had to plan more. So initially I did it by word of mouth, just meeting other travelers. And then once I had better access to internet, I started planning my trips. So I use a laptop and a computer with a screen reading software called Jaws. JAWS. And basically, every time I press a key on the laptop, it speaks to me. So as I say, it's a screen reader, so it reads the screen, and I use the arrow keys. I can touch type anyway, because the F key and the J key on all keyboards have got little tactile lines on them, so blind, visually impaired people can touch type. So I use the screen reading software, and then I basically research, go on the internet, and I say I want to visit Ecuador. I'll put in Ecuador Wiki Travel or Ecuador Wikipedia, and then I go online and I'll read about Ecuador and I'll read about the main cities, and then I'll make notes in a Word document. So first I'll make a list of the cities in the country I'm visiting, and then I'll look at each city, and then I'll see what do I want to visit in those cities. And for most people, they go traveling to see the sights or sit on a beach. But for me, it's not about the sights; it's about the smells and the sound. The food and the music and the people, and also visiting historical places. And I might go to a famous church or a mosque or a temple, and try and find a guide who can give me any history or an audio guide. I like to go to places with fountains and statues, waterfalls I can hear, statues I can touch. So going to somewhere like Krakow in Poland, where all the major monuments have got a tactile model of each monument. I can feel it and get an idea of what it looks like in my mind, and then go and visit that castle or cathedral and get an audio guide to hear about the information. I retain it all, I remember it all. So that's how I plan it.
Okay. Here at the hostel, basically at the entrance, I have a sign that says, "What you see is what you believed before you've looked." When I saw your TED Talks, thinking, this is the person who could probably understand this sign.
Yeah, of course it is, because you've got physical sight, but you've got inner sight. The sight inside. I see people, but I see them through my inner eye, through inner thoughts, through inner beliefs. That's what I see. I don't see the superficial.
Thank you. That's exactly a little bit of what I would like to talk about. It's sort of like having Christmas gift with all the wrappings when you tear it apart what's actually inside. Because I could imagine for yourself, if somebody is Asian, if somebody is black, white, whatever color the person might be, that's not something that affects how you see that person.
No, I can't relate to that. I don't know what that means. In my simple mind, it means the dark or light, but as skin, as pigment, I've got no real understanding of that. My judgment as people is how I find them, how they sound, what they say, what they don't say, how they react to my blindness and deafness, positive energy, negative energy. But when some people, they see someone, that's their first impression. For me, it's hearing someone or smelling them. They're my first impressions of a person. I still make judgments. Slightly different.
We try to say sometimes that it doesn't matter, but it does matter. And there are times when somebody walks up to a reception at the hotel, the person who's standing in front of them, because of their physical appearance, people will react to them quicker than others. The idea of how you see people through their internal ways, I think is definitely a lot more interesting.
We all have preconceived ideas, and my preconceived ideas of people are slightly different from someone's sight, I would say, because I'm not judging them visually.
Exactly.
I'm judging them on smell and sound and their reaction and their energies. I mean, that's one of the main things about traveling, is it's about people.
Exactly. Getting to know the people.
Culture, the people.
Other things that I some of your information, it was talking about you using couch surfing and these other forms where you actually do get to meet local people.
Couch surfing is the best. I'm visiting a country because I want to learn about the culture. And the best way I can find out about a country's culture is meeting and staying with the local people. But, they're going to take me to the places that people working in the hostel are not necessarily going to know about. And they take me to places that are away from the tourist traps and the big crowds, and hopefully find out about the real history of the country and about the real food. And, that richness of that uniqueness of meeting a native and listening to them and experiencing their family and how they think and feel and all those different kind of things that you can't get. However good and fun staying in a hostel can be, you just don't quite get that in a hostel or a hotel compared to staying with a local person.
Exactly. I had recently a young lady say to me, she's often thought about couch surfing, but the fear of going into somebody's house that she's never met. How would you recommend to someone if they wanted to start using couch?
My answer to that is we meet people every day that we've never met before. And, we have to ask them for advice or directions, or we don't know what their reactions might be. We don't know how they might speak to us and stuff, but we take that risk, we take that chance. All right, you might be going into a stranger's house for the first time. You can look at their profile beforehand, when it comes to couch surfing. You can read the references and get an idea. Person sound good? Does that person sound not so good? You can decide as a female, I want to stay with other females to add a bit of extra protection there. There's lots of ways of doing it and making it feel safe. Traveling is the unknown. It's all, I suppose it's a little easier for me because I've always been dealing with the unknown. It's slightly easier for me. I've always had to ask people, always had to trust people from a very young age. Just a simple thing like cross the street, give me direction to the bus stop.
Okay.
As I travel more, I've had to get people to trust people to help me use a cash machine and not rob me and things like this. So maybe I've adapted easier.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. Maybe some of the people who are listening to us right now might not be aware of exactly when you need to get money out the cash machine and you're in a hostel. How do you sort of give me a quick example of how you would determine who you would ask?
Yeah. So if I came to your hostel, there's different ways I could get to. I could get a taxi from the airport. I can find out about public transit and get in. Once I'm there, I walk in, a taxi driver will show me the door. I find someone on the street to help me get in. And then I introduce myself to the person on reception. And my name's Tony, blah, blah. I get them to show me to the dorm room and then get them to show me around the hostel. And then I start talking to people in my dorm room. Start making connections with them, hostel staff, go and ask questions. I want to know where the nearest supermarket is, where the nearest cafe is, bar is, and I want to know how to get to places. And then I would say, I need to use a cash machine, or I need to change money. Can you tell me how to get to the nearest bank? Or I might talk to a couple of people in my dorm room and start to get to know them and say, can you help me use the cash machine? And then I'd talk to them and listen to them and find out a bit about their story and stuff, and sort of strike a basic relationship. And they're like, I can trust this person. Use the cash machine. So I've always done it, And then sometimes I might ask the hostel staff to help me use the cash machine because they're working in a place where they're dealing with money and dealing with people that's reasonably trustworthy. And go from there. Really.
My next question, I think you've touched on it a little bit. Advantages do you think that you have?
I think the biggest advantage I have by being blind is I see people for who they are. I don't judge people through shape and size and skin color, and race and hair and tattoos or whatever. I judge people by how I meet them, how they interact with me and their energies, and I think that's an advantage. And also I feel that when I'm visiting a place, I'm walking through a market town or the jungle or wherever, I'm instead of just getting a visual picture of a place I'm in, something I'm visiting, I'm getting a more sensory overview, taking in the sounds, the smell, the different textures under my feet, if I'm walking on grass or gravel or concrete or tarmac, I'm going up a hill or down a hill. I'm walking through a jungle or forest, I can feel the different textures under my feet, sense the space around me, whether it's I'm walking through a field, it's open space, or I'm walking through a jungle that's narrow. I'm more sensitive to my surroundings.
Okay, definitely. What are places that are on your bucket list at the moment, or some of the activities that are on your bucket list?
Well, I'm attempting to visit every country in the world, both official and unofficial. And according to the UN, there's 193 countries. And of them, I've visited 125.
Okay.
So my first goal is to visit the rest of those countries. There's 68, I think I've got left. And then there's unofficial countries that basically the UN doesn't classify as a nation for whatever weird reason. Like Western Sahara or Kosovo or the Faroe Islands. So then I got a whole list of them I want to visit. So I got about another 100 countries to get to. And then maybe I'll try and visit every island in Greece or every island in the Philippines or something crazy like
that. Okay, there are a lot of islands.
Well, Indonesia's got 17,001. Greece has got 220 something inhabited islands.
Okay.
So yeah, I got a lot of places to keep me busy. But some of the sort of immediate countries I want to go to, places like India, Bangladesh. I was actually meant to be going to Bangladesh and Bhutan in March when Corona started to close every country down. So I hope to do that maybe end of this year, early next year. Bhutan would be particularly amazing.
Where were you when the coronavirus started closing down countries?
Well, so January, February, I was in the UK, and then I started hearing about it in China and Asia, and then I booked this trip to go to start in Bangladesh beginning of March and Bhutan and then India. I basically got told if I went to Bhutan, I'd be put in quarantine for 2 weeks. I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So I thought, I'll change my trip. So I managed to cancel that flight and get about half the money back. And then so I flew to Johannesburg, 4th of March, I think it was, spent the night there, and then took a bus to Botswana in Southern Africa, which I'd not been to before. Spent a couple of weeks traveling around Botswana, around the country, and then crossed into Zimbabwe. A few days I went to Victoria Falls. I've been to before, but I wanted to sort of get some videos and take some photos of it and meet some of the local people again. And I crossed into Zambia, and I ended up in Zambia for about 10 days. And I attempted to go into Namibia, but basically everything just went into shutdown. Closed all the borders. So I thought I might be able to stay in Zambia until early May, because I had a kidney transplant 10, 11 years ago. I need medication. So it's starting to get a bit more complicated about getting medication out to me. So I just knocked it on the head basically. I had to basically travel for a month and then came back to the UK.
Okay.
And I've been in the UK since the 1st of April.
Okay. And then we don't know when we'll be back out on the road again. It's a mystery.
No, hopefully sometime by the end of this year, October, November maybe. But just depends really.
Well, it's a mystery for the whole world, not only for you.
Exactly. So just keep busy planning the trips I want to do, researching the places I want to go, and sort of in the one certainty I know is this will end eventually, whether it's 6 months, 16 months, or 2 years. Things will gradually get back to more normal situations. Yeah, just got to keep busy really, and be positive, and do podcasts like this and other things.
Exactly, and just we'll keep envisioning the new travel plans that we have for the future.
Having dreams, and then you can achieve them.
Exactly. Some of your wow moments. I've actually heard about you bungee jumping. Talk a little bit.
You're not done a bungee jump. You should do a bungee jump, man.
I'm not. I'm actually afraid to put my head below my feet, so I don't. I've never bungee jumped, but I
just like close your eyes.
I can't close my eyes.
That's the way to do it.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So I basically traveled around New Zealand for 3 months when I was 21, 22. First place, I had a really big bungee jump, about 80 meters. And it was in the middle of nowhere, near about 2 hours from Wellington. And I basically went to this place. It's a bridge over a river. They're right, Tony, we're going to tie this bungee cord to your ankles, and then we shuffle you forward, and then you hit you 3 times, and you fall forward and bungee. Oh, all right, that sounds good. So we did that, and they got me to the edge. There's 2 people watching. The wind going through my beard and bridges swaying. There's no one else around. They're giving me hearing aids. I tell you, hit me 3 times and I just fell forward and it just dropped into nothingness. Mm-hmm. And then about 10, 15 seconds later, bang! My whole body sort of like hits the recoil. My arms go everywhere. My head goes back, and it's like a whole explosion. It's amazing. Basically like running into a brick wall. And the energy, the explosion from your body is almost as good as 6. Then I did 6 more.
Yes, I've heard that. And you've also skydived, right?
Yeah, I skydive. I fell out of an airplane with some fat guy on my back, an instructor. He said, "You can't do it on your own." I said, "I want to do it by myself." He said, "You won't know when the ground's approaching." I said, "Well, yeah, that could be a problem." So yeah, we did that. We went up to about 4,000 meters did my first one in Australia in 2002, and then we practiced. What we do is you put your arms across your chest and roll forward, and they say it's a bit like surfing but on air instead of water. So we get up there, and then the plane sort of levels off, and I can feel the plane leveling off and vibrating a bit, and then they open the door, and I can hear the wind and feel the wind, and then the instructor sort of shoves me towards this gap, and the wind's sort of trying to drag me out. Like 1, 2, 3, Tony. We roll forward, and we basically drop like a stone. Like trying to catch my breath, and and then we sort of spinning around, and it's really peaceful, very quiet once you leave the plane. Feel the warmth of the sun on my face, and then it's lovely. And then he pulls the harness. They go from a horizontal position to a vertical position, and pulls out the parachute, and then we sort of swing around the sky for 2 or 3 minutes, I suppose, and then have a nice gentle landing on the beach. Pretty awesome.
Wow, that sounds.
I've done some other crazy stuff. I've ridden on motorbikes, and I drove a jet boat in New Zealand. That was quite hilarious. The instructor was telling me like, turn left, turn right. Pretty wild. I love it. I love the adrenaline. I used to feel everything going through my body. I like roller coasters, anything like that.
Okay. No, definitely sounds pretty cool.
Whitewater rafting. I appreciate it's not for everybody.
No, totally. Has there been?
I tried to get my girlfriend to go bungee jumping with me. I said it'd be romantic, but she won't do it.
She's not having it.
No. And she can't see either.
Okay. But she has gone rafting and some of the other activities with you?
No, she won't do any of that. We did this thing called luging. It's like a little thing on wheels, not wheels, more like skis. And you basically go down a hill. You're sort of done by friction. So you steer it, but there's no wheels, no brakes. And you start at sort of the top of the hill, and you sort of drive around this course, really, going.
I know.
I managed to get my girlfriend to do that. She just basically sat in the back and screamed.
A lot of people would be sitting on the back and just screaming if you were driving down the hill with them.
Yeah. I want to go faster. No. I think you got to live once. You got to try things, and then some things you like, some things you won't. But if you don't try it, you can't say you don't like it, can you?
I 100% agree. So this is exactly what this whole podcast is all about. To encourage people, not only ones who are not started traveling, but the ones who are traveling, to also get a little bit out more of their comfort zones.
It's about taking little steps and just trying things. I can understand why people are scared, scared of the unknown and what's out there, or if I do something, will I fall on my ass, or but it's try to do it small. When I started traveling, I went to countries I could speak the language. I knew the infrastructure, so I felt confident. I felt fairly safe. And then once I was confident and really confident, I can do this. Then I went to somewhere like Thailand, where there was less infrastructure and English wasn't the first language. That's okay. I could get around Bangkok, even though it's holes everywhere and the traffic's crazy. And then I went to somewhere like Thailand, Vietnam, and crossing a road in Vietnam was like attempting suicide because 5,000 bicycles moving at once. But you get other people to help you. You just follow the crowd and people look out for you. So just sort of baby steps and just try little things. And then you like something, you do it again and again and again. What's
really interesting is that I had an interview with a 74-year-old woman who talked about you're never too old to stay in a hostel. And she started traveling as a retiree. And basically, she said the exact same thing you just said. She started off in countries. She's from the States. So she said her first trip was to England and to English-speaking countries. And little by little, she then expanded on going to other places that were more adventurous. So I think it could apply to everyone on how like cooking, innit?
When you sort of start cooking, you start off with a simple meal or a simple thing, and you like that. You get comfort cooking that, and then you expand a little. And traveling's the same.
Okay. Also, not only the podcast, but on our Facebook page, we have a series of written stories. And the very first story that inspired me to start this whole project, Cafecito Travel Talk, was a woman she's from the States, from Texas, completely deaf, a complete deaf traveler. When I said, wow, you're doing something so special, she goes, no, everyone else is doing it. Why can't I?
Exactly.
And
exactly. It's about attitude, yeah.
And that's how she went about. She also, for her, I think it was her 45th birthday, her goal, and she did it, was to do the Inca Trail.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And I know that you are raising funds. So if you would like to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I sort of go around the country, and when I get asked to do talks and stuff, and sometimes it's like a TEDx, and other times it's organisations that support blind and visually impaired people. And I got invited to do this one in a small town up in the northwest, near Manchester, that kind of area. When I was up there, I gave a talk, and then some of the people who organised it were saying, "Oh, we've got this charity thing, because it's a charity, so they need to raise money every year. We were going to get some people to go to hike the Inca Trail in Peru to raise money for us." I said, "Oh, that sounds fun. I'll do that." Thinking, yeah, right. So so I've basically been fundraising since December, and the plan was to go in October. So I was meant to be in the middle of my fitness training.
Okay.
Unfortunately, like everyone else, Corona has postponed that until next April now. So it gives me longer to get fit and raise more money.
Okay.
The charity is called Galloways Society for the Blind, and they support blind and visually impaired people all over the northwest of England. I mean, I was very lucky. I went to a boarding school when I was 10, 11, so I was very impressionable. And although most of the kids there had some sight, some of them were like me, basically didn't have any. And some other kids were in wheelchairs or couldn't walk too well or had speech impairments. So it taught me at a very young age that being blind and partially deaf wasn't the most difficult thing in the world. And my best friend was paralyzed, couldn't walk, and that taught me that life could be worse, and you've got to make the most of what you've got. We've all got skills, so some of us don't know that we've got them because they're not so obvious, and just make the most of it and have a go and find what you enjoy, really. It's like why I went to university, because I enjoy studying, not because I thought about, I've got to get a job and do this. I just do things because I enjoy it.
Was there ever a moment when you thought, okay, I'm going to put up my hiking boots and I'm not going to travel anymore?
No, but I had a moment on my early trips, when I thought, oh, I can't do this. I was in New Orleans, and I'd been studying in the States, and all my friends went down to Florida for spring break, went to see Mickey Mouse. And I thought, oh, not going to let me drink and party. So I'll go to New Orleans. Okay. We were studying in South Carolina. So I got university staff to help me book a flight and find a hostel. That'd be no problem. Get to New Orleans, jump in a cab, get to the hostel. I got to the hostel and met the staff, and, oh, can you give me directions to get to Bourbon Street, the main place in New Orleans to party? And I said, yeah, go outside, walk down the steps, turn left, walk a couple of blocks, you find a tram. And I walked outside, walked down the steps, and I just froze. It's like, I can't do this. I'm blind, I'm deaf, I'm in a foreign, dangerous city. How can I do this? How can I find a tram stop? And I just panicked about 10 seconds, and then I took a couple of deep breaths and said, "Oh, Tony, this is what you want. If you don't want it, go back inside and go home." I took a couple more deep breaths, turned left, walked out the street, found someone, asked them where the tram stop was, put me on the tram, went to Bourbon Street, and the rest is history. The traveling has really opened my eyes. It's taught me a lot about myself, maybe a better person, maybe a more patient person. When I first went traveling, I thought, oh, yeah, it'd be great. People that would help me in that because I'm blind. But I didn't really understand that people wanted to be with me because they like my personality. They like me for who I was. I thought, I'm blind, so they just feel pity for me. And that was something I learned as I traveled, as I changed from a teenager to a young adult. I realized that people wanted to hang around me because of who I was. And the fact that I was blind and deaf and had no hair didn't really matter. It's about being yourself. That's what I really learned. And I also learned to appreciate other people for what they are and who they are, no matter their background, culture, where they come from, what they believe. So it's about self-acceptance and accepting others, living life, and having a go.
Okay. On that note, I'm going to say thank you. I definitely enjoy having our conversation, talking to another Tony.
Yeah, Tony talking to Tony. Yeah.
All the best in the future plans.
Cool, man. Muchas gracias.
Okay.
As they say over there.
De nada. Okay.
Stay safe in beautiful Ecuador.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening in. Hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. For more information about Tony, his webpage, his TED Talks, please take a look at our podcast notes. Also like to give a special thanks to Marshall Donnelly, our editor, and please don't forget to check out our Facebook page where we have written stories. And if you're someone who likes to write, we're looking for people to write some more stories. Please don't forget to subscribe and to leave us ratings and your feedbacks. Any comments additional that you'd like to send, elcafecitotraveltalks@gmail.com. We look forward to seeing you here in Cuenca, Ecuador when this all clears away, and also in our sister location in Quito. Bye for now, and please stay safe.